Good evening and welcome to the first ever webinar in the Diocese of New England. We are so pleased that you're with us on this Tuesday evening. We're planning to be here for about 2 hours this evening. There'll be a break in the middle. There'll also be time for you to ask questions, and our special guest, Father Evan Armatas, will answer them. This webinar came to be at a diocesan council meeting a few months ago. We were discussing the seminar, the workshop we had last year for parish leaders and parish council members, which was held at the Church of St. John in Dedham, and what a success that was. And we wanted to do something for the leadership of the diocese. And given the fact that 2020 is a strange year, the best way to do it was online. Those of you who have been to a Zoom meeting before, this probably looks a little bit different than your typical Zoom meeting because it's actually a webinar. So for most of you, you can see us, but you can't see each other, and you won't be able to talk to each other. But when it comes time for Q&A, there's a little button at the bottom of your screen so you can send us the questions, and Khalil and I will monitor those questions and make sure they get to Father Evan. Many of you have heard the news that our Bishop John's uncle passed away, and so he's not with us tonight. We hope he will be back with us tomorrow. So in his place, we're going to ask our esteemed Dean, Father Ed Hughes, who I turned into a panelist, to give us an opening prayer, and then we'll turn it over to Khalil to introduce our guests. So I'm going to unmute Father Edward.
There it goes.
There you go. So if you'll open us with prayer, Father.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, O Heavenly King, the Comforter, the Spirit of truth, who art in all places and fillest all things, treasury of blessings and giver of life, come and dwell in us and cleanse us from every stain and save our souls, O gracious Lord. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father. And now I'm going to let Khalil introduce our guest. Khalil and Father Evan were together at seminary. As it turns out, I know Father Evan as well. He's the parish priest in Loveland, Colorado, where I have family. In fact, my dad is often known to attend the parish of St. Spyridon, where Father Evan serves. I've even had the pleasure of serving with him once, and I've got to tell you, he has a beautiful, vibrant, and lively parish, and so I think he's the perfect one to kick off the first ever webinar for the Diocese of New England. But I'm not going to say any more. I'm going to let Khalil take over at this point.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, Reverend Fathers, brothers and sisters of our diocese. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening for this webinar. And it's a great honor for me to introduce to you our speaker, Father Evan Armatas. Father Evan is originally from Colorado, but he's no stranger to the Northeast. He's a graduate of Boston College, and he received his Master of Divinity from Holy Cross Seminary here in Brookline. And that's when I first met Father Evan. I was a student at BC, and Father Evan, part of his seminary duties was he was the OCF advisor at BC. So I met him my freshman year, and blessed to come across our paths over the years since then. Father Evan is the pastor of St. Spyridon Church in Loveland, Colorado. He's been there since 2007, and he was the parish's first full-time priest, and he continues to serve there to this day. St. Spyridon Church began humbly. In its first year, they only had 6 families. Today, under Father Evan's leadership, it's a vibrant and growing parish of several hundred families. And in August of 2018, the parish moved into a brand new 18,000 square foot sanctuary and facility. In 2002, Father Evan founded the St. Nectarios Education Fund, which is a nonprofit student education program. The fund, which he manages along with its board, has established 5 schools in Africa, educated over 5,000 students, and delivered over $1 million in student aid through its network partners of International Orthodox Christian Charities and the OCMC, or Orthodox Christian Mission Center. You can also find many podcasts by Father Evan on his parish website and on Ancient Faith Radio. You can also listen to his live call-in radio show on Sunday, live call-in radio show called Orthodoxy Live, which also on Ancient Faith Radio, which broadcasts each Sunday night. And most recently, Father Evan released his first book entitled Toolkit for Spiritual Growth, a practical guide to prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, which is available again through Ancient Faith Publishing. This engaging and straightforward book uses scripture and pastoral experience to inspire those new to the faith and those already part of the church to shape and re-energize their relationship with Christ through these essential spiritual disciplines. Father Evan and his wife, Presbytera Anastasia, are the happy parents of 3 daughters, Alexia, Eleni, Maria, and their son, Spyridon. They live in beautiful Fort Collins, Colorado, where they like to ski, fly fish, and hike. And if you ever have the opportunity to travel to Loveland, which is about 1 hour north of Denver, I hope you're able to visit Father Evan and the faithful at St. Spyridon's in person. And with that, I'd like to now turn it over to Father Evan for our webinar.
Well, thank you, Khalil, for that welcome. And it is, of course, a great joy to be here with you this evening with all of the participants. I see there's about 54, 55 people that are joining us this evening. And this is an unusual circumstance for me because I'm used to being in person with people. Often when I give these presentations, this is the first time that I've attempted to give these presentations using a webinar. But I think the material and the content will help and aid you as a diocese as you look to renew and revitalize your commitment to the Great Commission. I want to thank Father John, Father Joseph and Bishop John for the invitation to the Diocese Board and their invitation to speak. I want to say I'm just very honored to be with you. I have to tell you, just last month, I was with the Metropolis of Boston, and Metropolitan Methodios invited me to join them. And not too long ago was with the Metropolis of Detroit, giving a similar presentation, and about a year ago with the Metropolis of San Francisco. All that to say that I think you're the beneficiaries of those experiences as I've condensed a lot of what I have been speaking about in these 4 presentations. Well, in the next 2 days, we're going to go on a journey together. And I'm going to be presenting to you a set of condensed and distilled thoughts on the topic of reclaiming the Great Commission, something that we're probably all fairly familiar with, found in Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 through 20. And our format's going to be simple. Let me pull up the next slide for you, and let me make sure this is working. There we go. I'm going to offer a series of talks with an opportunity for you all to ask questions at the end of each talk. So as I'm going through these presentations, if I were in your shoes, there's going to be a lot of material presented to you. I would have a pad of paper out. I'd begin to write questions down. And at the end of each talk should last about 40, 45 minutes. You'll have an opportunity to ask those questions. As Khalil mentioned, he will be moderating those questions and presenting them to me in this webinar format. So as you look at your screen, you'll see a list of 4 topics. The first of them being, what is parish health? The second, obstacles to parish health. The third, umbrellas, culture, and leadership. And the fourth, implementing a parish health plan. A word on my role with all of you. First I want to say, despite the introduction that Khalil gave, I am not an expert in anything. I'm really a learner. And for me, learning hasn't stopped. From the time that I began my journey through seminary and my time as a parish priest, reaching almost 20 years now, I've continued to attempt, through the grace of God, to learn what it means to be a priest and what it means to be an effective evangelist of the gospel. Second, what I'm going to do is attempt to share some of what I've learned, my own perspective, if you will, and material on what it means to be a healthy community. And I remind you that as I'm sharing my material, there are many others who can help you with the topics that I'm covering. And you may not yet be well versed in the topic parish health, and what it means. We're going to go through that. But let me just say that in the last probably 5 years, there's been an explosion of material from a number of different presenters on this topic. And it is gaining currency not only within, let's say, the Greek Archdiocese, but the Antiochian Archdiocese, the OCA, and beyond. And so, that might be something that down the road we can talk about some of the other experts that I think are out there that can help your diocese. So off we go. So let us begin by answering the question, what is parish health, by telling you a story. 13 years ago, I made a decision without much forethought. What exactly did I do? I was serving as a parish priest in an incredible parish, a place I came to love and a place I could have easily remained for the rest of my ministry. In the middle of that assignment, I went to my Metropolitan Isaiah of Denver, and I asked him, I want to be transferred. He was rather astounded. He said, what do you mean? Where do you want to go? And I said, well, I don't really know, but I think I want to start a mission parish. Now, his answer at the time was a flat no. Honestly, for me, the desire to start a mission parish had always been a secret one of mine, dating back to even before seminary. It was an idea that had sat in my own gut, in my heart, and stood there for a long time. And the only answer I can give as to why that's true is that I believe that at the heart of any parish priest, at the heart of any parish leader, anyone who's been touched deeply by the message and ministry of Jesus Christ, is the thought of mission work. We are all a little bit like St. Paul, and I've put the quotation up for you there from 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 16. For I preach the gospel, for if I preach the gospel, I have nothing to boast of. For I am under compulsion. For woe is me if I do not preach the gospel. So sitting in my gut was this desire to go beyond the experience that I had already in the church of serving an established, well-run community, and to take the gospel to a group of people who had never heard of Jesus Christ, or perhaps if they had never heard of his church, the Orthodox Church. So after about a year of asking, in 2007, Metropolitan Isaiah reluctantly agreed. At the time, he told me, look, I'll give you 2 years. That's all you get. After that, I'm transferring you back to an established parish in my metropolis. Now, why did he only give me 2 years? I can only guess, but what I think was in the back of his mind was the thought that sending a priest to a town, because I'm in Loveland, Colorado, where there had never been an Orthodox church, was really a good idea. He didn't think that a parish could be established in a place where Orthodoxy did not already exist. And to be honest, I don't think he was far from the truth. The first year or so was rough, to say it in the least. Every Sunday, my wife, Presbytera Stacy, after church would cry when we got home, asking me, what are we doing here? There'd only be a handful of people, 15, 5, maybe 20. And I had my doubts. Everything was hard. Those first liturgies were rough. And, we didn't have chanters, we didn't have a choir, we didn't have altar boys, we didn't have church school teachers, we didn't have icons, we didn't even have a phone. There was no bathroom to speak of. I'm not joking when I say we bought a building that literally had an outhouse in an alley. And I can remember at the very first service, when I served the liturgy for the first time, I had to stop the service. Because as I opened up the liturgy with blessed is the kingdom of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, there was no response from the people in attendance. I didn't have anybody to hold a candle when we had a procession or to hand me the censer during the entrance. In fact, I remember that first liturgy looking into the pews and finding someone standing there. I asked him, what is your name? David, he said. I said, "Hi, David, my name's Father Evan. And in just a moment, I'm going to walk out of the altar and I'm going to hand you a candle and a censer, and I want you to walk in front of me around the church." Now, a little over a year into my first year at the mission that Metropolitan Isaiah sent me to, he paid his first pastoral visit. He'd called me up and said, "Look, I want to come during Holy Week, during Wednesday at the unction service." And truthfully, I didn't know if anyone would come besides him and me and a handful of others, because we had never had Holy Week services before. It was our first time. And in fact, earlier in the week, on Sunday night and Monday night and Tuesday night, there were only a handful of people. Well, on that Wednesday when Metropolitan Isaiah came, the church, Miracle of Miracles, was full. The only problem was I didn't recognize most of the people, and I was fairly certain that none of them were Orthodox. Now, a few crossed themselves, a few as they walked into the church lit a candle, but most seemed to be lost, and their faces were unfamiliar. So in the middle of that service, I remember leaning over to Metropolitan Isaiah and saying to him, whispering, "Your Eminence, I think at the end of the service, we're going to need 2 lines. One, you can anoint people who are Orthodox with Holy Unction, and the other, I'll take oil off of the altar table and anoint them." He was rather startled because he didn't realize that the people in church weren't Orthodox, but he looked at me and responded, "Okay." And a good thing too, because as I thought, my line was much, much longer than his. I was right. That night and all along, there were only a handful of Orthodox Christians in northern Colorado. Now I have to tell you, by year 2, His Eminence came again, and things looked much different by then. And after his second visit during a Sunday liturgy, he looked at me and said, "It looks like you better stay." So as we move to our next slide, the question is, how did we get from this nascent beginning of just a handful of people to where we stand today? As Khalil mentioned, several hundred call St. Spyridon's their home, and that happened in just over a decade. Well, what have we learned about this parish health journey? So I have to tell you that if you make this journey with me, and again, we're just in the introductory stage, I haven't really told you much about what parish health is, what the obstacles to it are, what its concepts are, and how to get there. But let me tell you this, that if you go on this journey, I can guarantee, no matter the age of your parish, no matter its size or its difficulties, you'll find that it will bring about a transformation, a renaissance. You'll find for sure that this journey is full of ups and downs. You'll find that it requires prayer and hard work, and certainly that there's no end to the journey. You know, my parish is not a finished product, and no parish is. We are constantly a work in progress. But you might wonder, how is it that St. Spyridon found itself being transformed by this journey? Now, a lot of times when I give this presentation, as I said, I'm used to giving this in person. I'm used to interacting with you as an audience, as a body, and questions come up during the presentation. You're going to have to hold them because I can't see you as participants. I can't see the look on your face. I don't know if you're engaged. I don't know if everybody's already dropped off. But let me tell you some of the questions that usually come up when I start to talk about the journey. Some people will raise their hands and say, "Well, Father, there probably was in northern Colorado some latent population of Orthodox just waiting for a parish to open up down the street." Now, the reality is that's not true. The town I arrived in, of Loveland, Colorado, was at that time approximately 56,000 people, most of them living here because it was considered a retirement community. There had never been an Orthodox church before, and for that matter, most of the people I met had never even heard of Orthodoxy. Sometimes people ask, "Well, okay, Father, that's okay, but you must have had some sort of excellent outreach and evangelism program that you'll be sharing with us shortly, right?" And to that question, once again, I have to say no. I did not have, and still do not have, some in the box, ready to go evangelism program that you need to implement. People then ask, "Well, you had then maybe some beautiful church filled with icons and exquisite chanting that awed your guests and the non-Orthodox. Definitely not again. As I told you just a moment ago, we had this old rundown church that had literally an outhouse in an alley. How about some signature events like a festival or a conference of ideas or some sort of Orthodox marketplace that people could attend that put us on the map? No again. What about a full list of ministries and programs with slick materials and happy, informed facilitators? Not even close. Like I said, no Sunday school, no chanters, no choir, no staff. But despite all of that, we did get, quote unquote, there. Today, as Khalil mentioned, St. Spyridon's is a vibrant, interesting, lively, and growing parish. It's not a perfect parish. And as I said before, it's not even a finished product. But as you will learn, I don't believe any parish is ever finished. But I want to give you some sense of what goes on and some sense of the transformation that took place in the just over 10 years since I arrived here at this parish. Now, we regularly, weekdays and Sundays, receive new guests and inquirers. In fact, just 45 minutes before I got on this call, I got an email from another inquirer. Currently, we have over 30 people in our catechism class getting ready for baptism. On weekday liturgies, we often need more than one chalice. I currently have 3 deacons, and I always have 2 deacons serving with me on weekdays. So we often offer more than one chalice on a weekday. The same is true for pre-sanctified liturgies during Lent. There are over 150 children under the age of 15 now in our church school. In a weekday liturgy, I often have a choir, a full set of altar boys, ushers, more than one chanter, and dozens of communicants. We have Bible studies that reach not only our community in Colorado, but internationally. I held our online Bible study today, and once again, I was joined from participants around the country. There are over 1,800 subscribers to our YouTube channel. I hear hundreds of confessions a month, sometimes over 10 a day. And just a couple of Paschas ago, we baptized 21 people at the midnight service. Well, there's a lot going on. Even recently, as we opened up our brand new church in August of 2018, we counted it up and there were 35% of our parish had never seen the inside of an Orthodox church until that day, having worshiped with us in a gym, a warehouse, and a borrowed chapel. Now, I mentioned all this, and I want to say right from the start, it's not bragging or pride, but rather what I'm trying to do is offer a word of encouragement and to give witness to what God can do in a community that goes about chasing health. So how did we get there? Well, getting there takes parish health. And again, I haven't yet defined it for you, and I will in just a little bit, but I want to say a little bit about what is going to go beyond or behind that journey of parish health. Now, as I got here in year 1, honestly, that year, and for several years, I could not have told you anything about parish health. I couldn't have given you a term or a definition, but much like the narrative that I've just given you about the journey we've been on, I could only describe what was happening, but not really the mechanics or the how. But today I can. Today I can tell you unquestionably the answer to sustained vitality and growth, the answer to reclaiming the Great Commission is something called parish health. As I said earlier, we didn't have a program, and I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but I want you to be aware that the idea of parish health is not something that's only growing within the Orthodox world and circles, but it is something that has overtaken the Christian world. It used to be that parishes or churches attempted, or congregations attempted to put in place a evangelism program, a renewal program, a stewardship program. And in fact, when Khalil first contacted me and asked me to talk to you about stewardship and getting a stewardship program going, I quickly convinced him that is not the route you want to go. You'll hear more about this later, but I can tell you unquestionably, in study after study, health, meaning what we do as a community and how we operate, which we'll define, will determine the numbers of people in attendance and the resources available to you. Attendance in church, money in the till are trailing indicators of health, not the opposite. You don't chase health, you don't chase money, you don't chase people, you chase health. Now, there is no startup manual for parishes. There's no mission manual for startups, and there's no mission manual for renewing mission work in established parishes. One doesn't exist. But we can start to define what it means to be a healthy community. Now, before I say more about this, let me tell you about an experience I had that was incredibly helpful in my own self-growth and my own understanding of parish health, and the conviction I now have that parish health is what we should all be striving for. Well, a few years ago, our community, St. Spyridon's, was one of only 30 Christian communities, not Orthodox, but Christian communities selected from across the US and Canada, from every denomination you can think of: Presbyterian, Catholic, evangelical, non-denominational, intentional Christian living communities, by the Lilly Foundation. Some of you have maybe heard of the Lilly Foundation, but the Lilly Foundation came to us and they asked us, will you participate in an in-depth 2-year study on parish and community health? Now, the Lilly Foundation has billions of dollars at its disposal. And what they wanted to know was how our parish and the 29 other Christian communities had learned to thrive and grow in an environment, listen to this, where approximately 150 churches close each week in the US alone. So if you multiply that and you say in a month, okay, if you take 30 times 150, approximately 4,500 churches close each month in the US alone. Now, over time, what the parish leaders in this study told the team from Lilly collecting data was that our vitality and growth was because of something we all started to label parish health. That was our collective answer. And we said, look, growing and thriving communities exist because they're healthy. So obviously this led to the question in that study, how do you define parish health? And how would someone repeat what happened at St. Spyridon's or at one of those other growing churches? Now, I mention this because, once again, we were the only Orthodox community invited into this study. Yet at the same time, the experience we were having at St. Spyridon's was not all that different from the experience in these other 29 communities, but in many ways was actually better for reasons we'll discuss later. Now, let me say, as you'll see in that first bullet, let me tell you right now that there is no exact formula to creating a healthy parish. But at the same time, it's not a mystery, okay? Now, we repeated this to the researchers at Lilly time and again. We gathered on the campus of St. John's outside of Minneapolis, and we were together over the course of 2 years, 4 times a year, so 8 times for 3 days each time we gathered. And we kept repeating to the researchers, look, there's no formula. You can't just make a list of the attributes of a healthy parish or the steps to take while naively telling someone to repeat what you did, and voila, you're going to have a healthy community. It is not a list of tasks or to-dos. Often when I give this presentation, even after I say this and go through it, at the end, people come up to me and say, Father, can you just give me a list of best practices? Can you just tell me what 10 things, what 5 things, what 3 things our community should start doing tomorrow to bring about greater resources, more numbers, to recover our youth, to fill our liturgies? But look, don't look for the list. Don't look for the set of tasks. rather what we are going to talk about is to some degree something a little bit more nebulous, something a little bit more ambiguous, but you can figure it out. It's not like total parish health is an enigma. It's not a total mystery, a word we Orthodox love to use. It's not incomprehensible, okay? But at the same time, developing a healthy parish does not require some sort of advanced degree. It doesn't require specialists. It's not conjured up by virtuosos and gurus with advanced knowledge in missiology, outreach and evangelism, or organizational behavior. I showed up at St. Spyridon with no clue about how to go about creating a healthy parish, okay? But what I did show up to St. Spyridon's with is the list you see below. If you want to go on this journey and you want to get there, it will require sacrifice. It'll require blood. In other words, you're going to sacrifice something. It's going to cost you something. It will require sweat. There's effort involved, and it will require tears. There's going to be some sorrow and some loss. And again, we'll talk about what that means as we go along. It requires trial and error. Most of the communities as they discuss their journey would say, we tried this and we learned this and we modified it this way. Most parishes, as they calcify, as they plateau and even descend, become fearful, and they'll no longer attempt new things. They'll no longer allow themselves to fail and I iterate, do something a little bit different and create a new version of it. It does involve care. You got to care deeply about what you're doing. I know by the fact that it is a Tuesday night at 7 p.m. on the East Coast that you all care. You wouldn't be on this call. You wouldn't be paying attention to this presentation. You wouldn't be attending a webinar if you didn't care. So you must care deeply about the state of affairs in your church. The next one, it will involve the loss of things that many feel are essential and important. You cannot get healthy if you continue to eat donuts and smoke cigarettes. So there are certain things that your communities are doing, and we'll talk a lot about this in our next presentation on obstacles, that you're going to have to get rid of. All right. Next, it is a combination of both skill and artistry. Skill in the sense that we have to know what we're doing to a degree, and we have to acquire the skills we don't have. We can't go about our business and not have some proficiency. At the same time, there's a bit of artistry here. It's not all wrapped up in skill. Some of it is going to be gut and your own sense of what the next best move is. So we have to believe it's a combination of skill and artistry. Also, parish health is a complicated living thing that requires your utmost sustained attention, because you can't simply throw out some ideas and walk away, nor will it happen overnight. I still get up each and every day and work on the health of this parish. We just had our parish health, our parish assembly on Sunday. We had 78 attendees on a COVID modified assembly meeting. And we talked about parish health. I went through the fundamentals of it. Again, we're constantly socializing and re-energizing ourselves around these concepts. And finally, parish health relies on a promise from God that he will and does give growth and abides in his church. That's found in the end of the quotation from the Great Commission in Matthew 28. And lo, I am with you always until the close of the age. You'll have to excuse me. I just got over influenza and only returned back to the church after a 2-week absence this past Sunday. So I still have a bit of a stuffed nose and a sore throat. Now, of course, this whole journey is worth it. I want to tell you about something that happened not long ago. I mentioned that when we moved into our new sanctuary, 34% of our community had never been inside an Orthodox church. That had happened because we had purchased a new facility. It wasn't an Orthodox church. It was a building, and we were worshiping in a gymnasium. And we called it the Sanctinasium, or the Gymnachurch. And we had a small little candle stand with, some 8x10 icons. And when we moved into our new sanctuary, about 8 months in, a year in, we had an iconography project that got installed. So the whole east wall now has iconography. And this winter, we're installing iconography in the north and south transepts. So we installed iconography of a scope and size that no one in our community had ever seen, right? We brought a group of iconographers over from Greece, and we had an unveiling. We did a Vespers and an unveiling. The next morning, my inbox was full of emails, and here's one of them. Dear Father Evan and Parish Council, thank you for last night and all of the explanations about our new iconography. It was an incredible evening. I loved being there with everyone. It was so celebrative, so much to be thankful for. So thankful for you and for the other leaders in our community, and for their sacrifices. Those you and others have offered and continue to. I love our church. I love you. I love our community. It is so beautiful. I am so thankful. This journey, which is not easy, and which we'll talk about, takes approximately 7 years. Okay, think of that. If you decide to go on this journey, it's going to take you about 7 years to get there. And I'm going to talk about that in our experience as well. But, St. Paul once wrote in Romans 10, verse 15, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the gospel of peace, who bring glad tidings of good things. We're going to go on to our next slide. All right, so now we're starting to get into the meat of our presentation, and I'm going to start to define this thing, parish health, okay? So you should have a slide in front of you at this point that is titled Parish Health. And parish health is multidimensional and interconnected. All right. Now, if I blindfolded you and allowed you to glimpse only certain elements of the parish of St. Spyridon, you would certainly develop an incomplete view of it. You'd misinterpret or misunderstand who we are and how we got to be a thriving and growing parish, how we claim the Great Commission. So to help all of us, I want to define for you what I mean by the term parish health. Now, this is important because when you lay out what parish health is, and we're going to get into creating a parish health plan in our last session, one of the things you're going to fight against is competing ideas. This is a natural thing that occurs in organizations. It's sometimes innocuous, people don't have ill will, and sometimes it's sabotage or resistance. And so it's so important that we lay out for ourselves and then for our communities a very clear, developed definition of what parish health is, okay? And at the end of this presentation, we're going to talk about some of the misconceptions that are out there about what it means to be healthy. But let me start. I tell you, without blinking, that parish health begins by fostering in each member a personal commitment to Christ and the gospel. That's orthodoxy. Now, some of us in our interactions with non-Orthodox may have heard of the idea that people need to make a personal commitment to Jesus Christ. But we say it in our own liturgy. Let us commit ourselves and one another and our whole lives to Christ our God. In such a setting, the spiritual needs of those in our community are not only met, but exceeded by the sufficiency of a personal relationship with Jesus. That is something we commit to in parish health. Second, orthopraxia. It's a personal commitment to live the gospel every day. We've got to see, does the commitment to Jesus Christ show up in the decisions people make day in and day out? Is it found in the lives of our parish? Does it impact them and transform them? I have a new member. He's a city attorney. He was an atheist until he showed up at St. Spyridon's. Through his conversion process, he's been sharing with me how the gospel now affects his legal practice, how the framework for the church now factors in to how he's dealing with very complicated issues. He oversees the police department. He oversees sanitation for the city, and how now in interacting with these departments, the gospel plays a part in his legal decisions. Third, parish health is about relationships and community. You see koinonia. It's about becoming a spiritual family. You know, when I arrived the first time at St. Spyridon, we had an assembly, and someone asked, "Father, how long are you with us?" And I said, "I'm here to leave my bones with you." My oldest child at that time was 4. She's now going into college. And I told them, "Look, you're going to be invited to my daughter's wedding." A healthy community, a healthy parish develops the bonds, the fellowship, the interconnected social interactions of a family. And not one of the maverick builders of church communities that I met in the Lily presentation or the Lily study failed to mention the importance of this. Finally, parish health is about pursuing excellence in leadership, organization, and administration, politia. This can only come about through a firm and abiding commitment to leadership training and development, which we'll talk about, and the clarity of identity that comes by way of thoughtful and continued strategic planning. And we'll talk about that as well later. I'm not kidding you. When I got to St. Spyridon, we didn't know how much was in our bank account. People would give us checks. Weeks later, those checks wouldn't be deposited. Can you imagine getting a check and not depositing it? We lacked the developed leadership and the effective and efficient organizational structure to handle people's money. We didn't know what our identity was. We hadn't spent the time to define our vision and mission, and then take the essential next steps of grafting this vision and mission into the lives and the hearts of the community. And so parish health is found in the excellence of our day-to-day management and operation of the fundamentals, right? We have to learn to communicate effectively, operate with integrity, believe in transparency, show fiscal discipline, and have great administrative order. Okay, now this list that I gave you, this definition, is incomplete. I'm sure that people could come up with some other aspects, but I know that a community focused on these 4 interconnected, multidimensional aspects of parish health will become healthier day in and day out. Now, look, this is a hard thing to sit and listen to on a webinar, and you may already have started to check out, and I understand that, but trust me, there is not a community out there that is thriving and growing right now that has not applied these precepts and these concepts. So you've got to pay attention, and you've got to start to understand them as best you can. Now, as we get going, and I'm looking at our time here, I need to sort of wrap up this first presentation, and I've got pages of material still left for you. I want to just point out very briefly, look, no one gets this right the first time or right away. So be patient. Continue to ask questions. Listen to what your people are telling you and incorporate that. And realize that the Great Commission is now understood through this lens of parish health, okay? In my 38 years prior to arriving at St. Spyridon's, I made very few mistakes, if you will, compared to how many I've made in my journey. So you're not going to get it right. You're not going to have things out of the box ready to go. But if you start to operate according to these principles, people will be patient. They'll start to ask questions. They'll get engaged. They'll be excited. They'll start telling you things. And then you can start to incorporate those things. You know, I have not stopped asking questions. You know, when we got on this track, I started to ask myself questions like, can a non-Orthodox person be a member of our parish? Can I do a memorial for someone who isn't Orthodox? Can I hear someone confession if they're not baptized? Is it essential to have a vision and a mission that people, they themselves, can repeat? What does worship mean to our people? Are we impacting the community around us? Why do people show up and stick around? There's no doubt that as you get engaged in these concepts, as you take on this journey of parish health, things will start to change. Now, I said to you earlier that there are some things that you need to be aware of as you get going on this journey. Parish health means different things to different people. And so you're going to have to work towards a shared understanding of what is essential. And you're going to need a plan to make it happen. Now, I'm going to get to all of those things as we go. But one of the things that I want you to know also is that as you start this journey, you're going to have to engage the leadership of your community. Nothing will happen if the leadership, the parish priest, the council, key stakeholders, and ministry leaders are not engaged. So they have to be engaged. And we're going to talk about that in creating our parish health plan. Number two, this is not something that you do for a little bit and stop. So I've borrowed the phrase from the liturgy, unto the ages of ages, amen. When we get involved in parish health, it is a continuum, all right? You will be doing this for the rest of the time that your parish exists. You'll hand this off in a transcendent way to the next group of leaders. So our parish has engaged in parish health, and each successive wave of leaders that come in is now taking on the mantle and the importance of parish health. And then finally, you'll see that last bullet. Nothing is going to change in your community without a corresponding change in our leaders and their behavior. So you're the leadership of the Diocese of Worcester and New England, you're on the call. So you're the ones who are going to affect the change in your parish and in your diocese. Now, let me tell you how exciting this gets. Parish of St. Spyridon's is one of 50 communities in the metropolis of Denver. We went on this journey on our own. 8 years ago, Metropolitan Isaiah asked me to give a presentation to our diocesan meeting as to what was happening at St. Spyridon's. We talked about, and I didn't have all the words and definitions I have now for it. We talked about what was happening on St. Spyridon's at that meeting. Today, the metropolis of Denver has established a permanent office with a full-time employee whose single goal is to bring about parish health in each of the parishes of the metropolis of Denver. And so we've reached a tipping point where the idea is no longer in only the parish of St. Spyridon. It's now the goal of the entire metropolis of Denver. All right, let's go on. Now, the value of parish health. It is the single most important factor in your parish's vitality and growth. And as I said earlier, I want you to be aware of this. You will not see vitality and growth until you get healthy. They are outcomes, okay? And so now I want to say a little bit more about this. You know, parish health isn't a pill. This goes back to me saying earlier, it's not a list of things to do. It's not a set of tasks. There's no formula, but it's going to be a lifestyle change in the parish. And when we get healthy, it provides the best possible environment for people to come to know Jesus Christ and to be transformed by their relationship with you, okay? There's no quick fix though. You know, my father, God bless my father, he's turned 80. He recently had some trouble with his heart. He went in, they found some blockage. He ended up having 5 stents put into his heart. As he was laying in his hospital bed, I went to my dad and I said, Dad, boy, we're so thankful that you got in, that they've put these stents in. 5 stents is a lot. Probably you're going to need to make some changes in your diet and in your lifestyle. And my dad said, no, son. He said, my doctor told me all I need to do is take a pill and it'll cure my problem. And in fact, the day he was released from the hospital, he went and had a steak. Well, I'm here to tell you that parish health isn't a pill. You have to start to think about what worked in the past, or that great idea I heard of these things are not going to bring about what we're looking for in terms of parish health, but rather the tragedy is that when you think about that, you fail to, like my father, make the changes you need to the lifestyle and the culture of your parish. So I want you to think about parish health similar to losing weight or improving your cardiovascular health. And when you make that leap in understanding, then you stop looking at the challenge of parish growth and vitality as if it was a pill, and you start to understand it as something in which you need to change the way we are living as a community. All right. Now, context. Not all types of growth are important or good. There are many types of growth in the parish that are not good or sustainable. I want you to think about Beanie Babies, or I want you to think about the Nazi Party. Now, in my own metropolis, I have to tell you that in the years past, the largest event has been a basketball tournament. It attracts thousands of participants, but it fails to increase the worship life and the spiritual well-being of our parishes one bit. Most parishes' largest event is its festival, and yet the week after, there are no more people in liturgy than there were the week prior. So not all types of events, not all types of growth in our parishes are good or sustainable. Next, parish health is a continuum. There's no correct score, ranking, or end to it. Instead, we each need to recognize that all steps towards health are good and further steps are better. In this mindset, we no longer track ourselves and saying, we're not as good as Parish X. We're not like Father Evan's parish. No, rather, like St. Paul in Philippians chapter 3, verse 13, he says, one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind, I reach forward to what lies ahead. I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call in God in Christ Jesus. Next, the landscape has changed and keeps changing. In the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese, from 1996 through 2015, the number of baptisms and chrismations went down by 25%. Think of that. In just under 20 years, we are doing 25% less in terms of baptisms and chrismations. Okay? At the same time, in that same period, the number of funerals has increased by 30%. To make matters worse, in that time frame, the number or percentage of Americans no longer interested or affiliated with any faith is at 29%, an all-time high. And that number grows when we look at people under a certain age. If you're born after 1980, then that number goes to 35%. So there needs to be within your own communities an urgency to this idea of parish health. Nothing's going to happen without that sense of urgency. And we've, in a sense, in the Orthodox world, been numb to it. We've been somewhat protected from it. But I have to tell you, you probably are already seeing it. If you look around, our parishes are growing older and smaller. Our resources are shrinking. There's not a sort of bleed going on, but rather a hemorrhaging. And so if we fail to realize that things are very different, we may approach this challenge incorrectly. And finally, it's God that gives the growth. There's a story in the Gospel of Mark where the farmer goes out and plants some seeds, and the seeds grow, and he knows not how. The truth of the matter is, growth will come. God promises it. The question will become, as we'll attend to it in the next session, is what's standing in the way of growth? Do any of us think for a moment that God doesn't want his church to grow? No, he does. He sent his Holy Spirit into the world to draw all people to himself. So if our parish isn't growing, what's up? Because it should be. All right, Khalil, I'm going to stop this part of the presentation. I know we're at the 8 o'clock mark, so I've been talking for about 45 minutes, and I don't know if we've got any questions now, but let's take a little break here, and if you've got any questions, you can pose them.
Father, I don't know if Khalil's back on yet or not. We don't have any questions yet.
Okay.
For
No
those of
problem.
you who are not familiar with the webinar, at the bottom of your screen, there's a icon that says Q&A. That's a good place where you can type your questions in. They will come, and Khalil and I will be able to look at them and then pass them on to Father. I do see a couple of questions popping up now, but we've allotted for like a 10-minute break in this, so maybe if Father Evan, if you want to go refill your tea and everyone else can go get a second scoop of ice cream, we'll come back at exactly 10 minutes after 8. Maybe we'll answer the questions then and begin the second session. Does that sound okay?
That sounds great. So we'll take a 10-minute break. People can post any questions in that chat box. And after that, we'll start our second session.
Perfect. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
All
10
right.
minutes after 8, we'll be back.
All right. Sounds good.
Matthew asked whether there will be copies of the presentations, and the answer is yes. This entire presentation is being recorded.
Father Joseph, I'll just add, I'll have Khalil loop back with me, and I'll send you a couple of links to some additional YouTube resources on this topic, as well as the fact that I've got a resource sheet that people can have. And then finally, I've got a book coming on this topic. So we'll of course let you all know when that comes out.
Awesome. That's great. Okay, Khalil, ask the questions.
Great. So Carolyn asks, what if you are starting a mission with no priest?
Carolyn, we're going to talk a lot about that in our fourth presentation about creating our parish health plan and in leadership development, which is part of our third topic as well. It's not really a problem, because what we want to do is we want to get a group of leaders together, and we're going to talk very carefully about what that group of leaders does and how they get ready to begin implementing a parish health plan. It can begin without a parish priest. It's ideal if you have one with you, but we'll talk about this in another session. Again, we're limited on time, but one of the concepts that you have to be aware of is we want to create a transcendent culture. So it doesn't matter who the parish council president is. To a degree, it won't matter who the parish priest is. They'll inherit a healthy culture, and they'll conform to that healthy culture, as opposed to, and we'll talk about this again later, one of the obstacles to parish health, which is forming a chapel or daddy model where key people seem to influence the overall health and direction of the parish. So it's not a problem. You can do this without a priest, as long as we do have a parish leadership health team.
The next question is, what are your thoughts on parishioners that give generously to the church through stewardship, but never attend liturgy?
Well, obviously the answer here should be that this isn't a healthy paradigm. It's not a sustainable paradigm. And that is a sign of an unhealthy parish situation. Look, we, of course, are thankful for those types of donations, but I can tell you that we should see a corresponding sort of link between engaged and giving. In fact, there is not a study out there that does not show that as we move towards a more engaged level in the parish, which means attending worship regularly and weekday services and feast days, that our giving goes up. And giving, keep in mind, giving is not just money, right? It's our treasure, yes, but it's our time, it's our talents. So that's a bit of an unhealthy paradigm. And a lot of our parishes have it. They're sort of legacy gifts, but I can just tell you that they don't last over time.
The next question from Joel is, was there a clear turning point when you ceased to cry after liturgy and you noticed that God was making something happen? I tend to think that a small core of strong believers is what will be a good predictor of a healthy parish. Does that sound right?
The short answer is yes. A short, engaged core group, but I can tell you right now, if it stays a small, engaged core group, then that's not healthy. One of the predictors of health is demographic and idea diversity. When we start to see a wide range of people, different age groups, different backgrounds, different beliefs. In fact, one of the primary indicators of a healthy community is economic diversity. It's actually the hardest one to hit. You might have age diversity, but you won't have economic diversity. And healthy communities have a large disparity between the wealthy and the poor. They see all manner of people in the pews. So yes, it's a part. What I would say to you is the journey towards parish health at a minimum takes 7 years and never ends. In other words, what I'm saying is if you implement a parish health plan today, it's about 7 years before it becomes part of the fabric of the community, okay? But then it keeps going. So when you ask me, when did I start to see a turning point? I probably saw a glimmer of hope at the end of year 2, in the sense of that we were starting to grow and vitality was starting to come around. But I'd have to tell you, I feel more hopeful 13 years down the road than I did even in those beginning stages, because I see the health of the parish really taking off. I'll give you an example. In the 8 months that COVID has been affecting us, our parish has established 5 new ministries. I'll give you an example. One of those ministries was a COVID outreach fund. They raised approximately $50,000 to reach the needs of local people, not only in our community, but outside our community that were struggling because of COVID. Another ministry that they began was a feeding program in Ecuador. And at this point, they've established this feeding program. They've got 2 representatives in Ecuador. They've delivered over 1,800 family meal kits. On a weekly basis, they deliver 85 meal kits. That happened during COVID. So when you say, when did I start to feel better? I feel better all the time because we continue to get healthier. So it's not like there's an aha moment. What I would say to you, it's a little like a sunrise. It just gets brighter as you go.
Thank you, Father. The next question, it says, it seems like we are back to concrete steps to take. What have we have to start somewhere. Who takes the first step? Is it the parish council, the priest, together? What steps do they actually take? Who defines it? Otherwise, we just walk away from it. Oh.
Right. I'm going to stop you, Cleo, because we're going to get to that question in the next 3 presentations. I'm going to give you a plan, but I just don't want you to think, oh, Father Evan told us to do these 5 things and we'll be fine. I'm going to define concepts, right? And transformational steps you need to take, okay? There's a difference between adaptive change, which is what we're after, and technical change. Technical change is saying, well, to get, where we need to go, we need to do the liturgy instead of at 10 o'clock at 9 o'clock, right? Adaptive change is we need to engage people in the worship of God, right? So we're going to talk about that. You're not going to walk away going, he didn't get anything tangible, but I got to get you addressed or moving on the concept of parish health. That's what we're after, okay? We're not after more money. We're not after more people. We're after health. Those things come.
Okay, we're going to do one more question so that we can hold the other questions that are here for the second thing, just so we can keep the moving. The next question from Brenda is, what suggestions do you have in getting people in their 30s and 40s involved? They just don't seem to have the time, is what we were told.
So one of the largest nonprofit Christian ministries in the non-Orthodox world is down the street. It's called Group. Group Ministry publishes all sorts of material. They're focused on youth ministry. They recently had their national conference. They invited me to be a speaker. The reason they invited me is because they looked at the demographics of our parish and said, you have an upside down pyramid. And most of our parishes are an inverted pyramid. Most of our congregations, they're getting older. Yours is getting younger. I've been here 13 years. I've done 5 funerals. I've done several hundred baptisms. Father Evan, I'm not a superstar. That's not what I'm telling you. What I want to say is we have chased health. When you chase health, people show up. And that demographic that you're mentioning will especially show up. I'm full of 30-somethings. My largest demographic is under the age of 35, right? So if you get healthy, right, you will see that demographic diversity and vibrancy return. So you don't go after getting 30-year-olds. You don't say, well, what can we do to get the 30-year-olds to come to church? Because they're telling us they don't have time, so can we make the meeting shorter? No. You go after health. And, I spent a lot of time here just telling you that Parish Health's the answer, but trust me, you're going to try to disprove that in 50 different ways. You know, you're going to keep asking yourself, well, what do we do to get this to work? Trust me, it's Parish Health. When we get healthy, all of these things, our youth ministry, our finances, our missions work, our outreach, it all gets better. Okay, we had a national outreach and evangelism conference in the Greek Archdiocese. I was the keynote speaker. The first question was, what is the evangelism and outreach program you would implement in your parish? And it said, I wouldn't do one. I said, just get healthy. And the director of outreach and evangelism for the Greek Archdiocese gasped. And I said, Father Jim, it's the truth. And he said, you know what, you're right. You will become a parish that does outreach and evangelism when you become healthy. And you'll get 30-year-olds, you'll get 40-year-olds, you'll get teens, you'll get 20-year-olds. They'll show up in spades.